So I'll just start reading the first question from Ariane. She's asking, should we include risk and assumptions in the theory of change design? They are often each other's opposites.
Thanks for that question, Ariane. It's a really good one. So what we ask for in terms of the way that you present your risks and assumptions, we want you to present that in the log frame template. There's a space for you to outline what risks and assumptions you have identified under each outcome and output statement. In terms of the theory of change diagram itself, very flexible with that. What we're looking for there is that you have considered the external factors and where they might influence your design. So yeah, it's up to you whether you prefer to just outline your risks and assumptions in only the log frame to present something more sort of visually appealing in the theory of change diagram, because maybe there's quite a lot of things that you've identified. But the expert committee will be looking to see that you have at least included some of the external factors there in the theory of change visual. Okay. And would you add anything to that, James?
No, I think that's perfect.
Great. So the next question is from Henry. Is the grantee required to cover any costs of the donor reviews visits? Can we include such costs in our budget?
Great question, Henry. So here, any costs that would be incurred as part of these visits would be covered by us. So it's near us as the grant administrator would be arranging these reviews. And if you see any costs that might be incurred here, you flag them to us. We can agree that beforehand. So you don't need to consider this when you're doing your budget at application stage.
Thank you, Nicola. The next question is from Jerome. One selection criteria is value for money. What does it mean for the choice of success indicators, monetization? And will the proposals be judged at the outcome level or impact level? Can you give some example of smart indication for ocean objectives in terms of ocean conservation? Impact evaluation may be tricky with few years timeline.
Thanks, Jerome. So I think one thing to point out here is that the Ocean Expert Committee won't be just looking at your proposal in terms of impact or outcome. They'll be looking at the full package. So they'll be trying to understand whether the things that you have presented there look feasible, realistic, achievable, and that they'll use the evidence that you've provided to make that assessment. For value for money, you need to consider your level of monitoring and evaluation and whether it's proportionate to what you're planning to do in your project. So one thing to consider is that monitoring costs money. There might be lots of things that you might want to collect data on, but not all of them are essential for you to be able to show your progress. You might have to make some compromises. We understand that you don't have an unlimited budget, so you'll have to make the call yourself, which is the best way and most cost-effective way to do the monitoring and evaluation of your project. In terms of smart indicators, I think that this came before James ran through the smart indicators, so we gave a few examples. We went through the example of how to smarten indicators there, so I won't go into that just now so that we can cover more questions. But if you do have any other questions on that specifically, please let us know at the help desk if there's something that we weren't able to answer today.
Okay, next one is from Tapan, asking about the midterm review. Will it have to be conducted externally or internally by the lead organization?
So the midterm reviews as organized by us as the grant administrator, this would be we would select somebody with the relevant experience to go out and conduct that review. And as I mentioned before, that will come out of our budget rather than your own budget, but we'll have to agree any costs and things like that with you beforehand. But this is only for selected projects. So if you have some needs in your own project, you see the value of having your own evaluation and processes like that you think would best be conducted by a third party, then you should consider adding that to your budget in the correct budget line. So think about whether you need to add consultancy costs, for example, to get an independent evaluator to look at certain areas of your project, if that's proportionate to what you're trying to do.
Thank you, Nicola. Next one from Pauline. If we have a separate risk matrix, then we can opt to just have assumptions in the log frame template so it's not too crowded with the risks.
Yes, absolutely. So here we want just like the key things that might affect. So the risk register that we have as part of the application separately, that's the place to really expand upon all of the risks. But when you're thinking about when we talk about risks and assumptions, these are the sort of the killer risk, the killer assumptions, the things that if it went wrong, you just wouldn't be able to achieve what you're set out to achieve. So yeah, you don't need to go into massive amounts of details here in the log frame. That's not the place for it. It's more about just identifying what those key ones are.
Yeah, thank you, Nicola. And I think it also answered the next question from Henry. So there seems to be some general confusion around the risks to be inputted into the risk matrix and the risks to be inputted into the log frame template. So I think you answered that well, but in case you want to add anything else.
Yeah, I think it's essentially the same answer there. Really, we're looking for those key ones that you need to highlight that might affect that particular output or outcome that you're writing about in your log frame. But you don't need to go into all of the specifics. That's what the risk register is for.
Okay, thank you, Nick. I think that provided good clarity. The next question is from Regine asking, would it make sense at all to use the standard indicator list you recently published for the DEFRA Challenge Fund as a guide?
So the standard indicator list for the Biodiversity Challenge Fund, you can certainly use that for inspiration if you're looking for ideas for indicators that might be relevant to your project. But the standard indicators that are being developed for ocean will be related to the Blue Planet Fund, so might differ from this. Obviously, both differ programs, so there's likely to be a lot of crossover, but you could probably have a look and see and get some inspiration from there. But as I say, when projects actually start, we'll be able to provide more guidance on and to help you on how best to fit this into your log frame. But the emphasis here is on making sure that your indicators that you put in an application are smart rather than general, like the standard indicators, and that you make sure that they're relevant for your project itself. So project first, and then whatever we can get to report up to program level is good too. So, James, do you have any comments on standard indicators for BCF?
No, I think just to mention also, you'll notice that the standard indicators are quite general. And in a sense, we've had a lot of feedback so far from projects that they may not be specific enough to actually measure something in the context of your project. So we do encourage you to have a look at them, be inspired, but ideally we'd like to see something a little more specific or a little bit more meaningful in the context of your whatever project you are working on.
Great. Thank you, James. The next question is from Birendra, who's asking, how do you verify baseline data?
Thanks for your question. So this will be the role of the people who are looking at your, at the application stage, the Ocean Expert Committee will just assess whether the source of evidence that you put for your baseline data seems to be robust or not. They probably won't be going into the complete details of your baseline data, but if your project comes under a review, for example, these are the sort of things that the reviewer might be looking at to double check that that the things that you've put are correct and are true.
Great, thank you. Next question is again from Ariane around the SMART definition of the indicator. If the indicator has to be smart, I think we should include the value in the indicator, and then the target would mention the same number, right?
James, do you have any comment on that?
I would say yes, just to be sure, just to be very clear. Yeah. And ideally also you could include both the target and the baseline in the actual wording. So the statement can say, 350 people reached with X or Y, and then in brackets you could say how many of those people had that before, or whatever it is you're trying to achieve.
Mm.
Does that make sense, Nick?
Yeah, it does. I think you have to be pragmatic there. Like I understand that it's about balancing of what James was saying. You want your indicator to be simple enough to read. So if you feel like you've started to write an essay in your indicator, maybe take a step back and think about how you can simplify the indicator, and think about it from a reviewer's perspective. They'll be reading a lot of different applications. They want to be able to see at a glance from that statement what you're trying to do. So if it's a long paragraph, think about how you can simplify it, and if you think it make it much more obvious to have the baseline and target included in there, then it would be a good idea to do so.
Right, but I noticed in the templates, I mean, we do have specific areas where you include that as well. So really,
yeah,
it's just for improving clarity, and we do need to be balanced on that.
This question from Moses is asking, will the monitoring reviews and the midterm reviews be conducted by NERAS or HMG? I think we explained NERAS, but
in some cases, you might have visitors from DEFRA who want to come and observe the project too, but we would be letting you know in advance of that, and then any review itself would be conducted by somebody independent that we organise through NERAS. We'll have trusted experts who will go out to visit and do that independent review.
Rocky is saying also we need to add space for indicator definition, isn't it? I'm not sure.
Is this maybe in the templates? So there's a space there for writing your statement, and then there's the space for putting your targets, baselines, and milestones. As James mentioned, it might not be always relevant to have the milestones in there, but it does kind of show that we do recommend that you put milestones wherever possible, because it can help you to track your own progress. So yeah, do try to do that. And then Rocky's also asking about milestones and whether it should be cumulative. Yes, we prefer to have that. Obviously, we didn't cover that today just because we're not quite at reporting stage, but yeah, it's true that it is best to present those cumulatively, and that's what will make most sense to the assessor too.
Okay. Thank you, Nicola. Mieke is asking, the visual is quite linear. Is this what is expected? Are multiple pathways that are non-linear also allowed?
So I'll just come back to this. I think this is referred to theory of change. So go back to that visual. So the visuals that we've presented are quite simplified versions, but as I say, we're very flexible about that. So here we've got quite a linear example where your inputs lead to outputs, lead to outcome, and then that leads to impact. But the sort of beauty of using the theory of change diagram is that you don't need to present it in a linear way, because it might not be that way in reality. So as a simple example, if you think that it is a linear process, you could present it this way. But if you think it is a more complex process, so here's an example, still fairly linear, but an example of how you've got a problem that could be solved by a number of different activities. Maybe certain activities will lead to this intermediate outcome here, and then a completely separate intermediate outcome here that would help you to reach your final outcome. And pathways can be a lot more complex than this. You can have a look online at different theories of change. Just recommend doing like a Google image search of theory of change, and you'll come up with a lot of different ways of presenting that, and especially those like more complex pathways. James, I don't know if you have any advice on this specifically.
No, just recognizing, I think, in line with the training we often give for the Biodiversity Challenge Fund, it can be really good to use a combination of tools. So some of them are really showing that complexity, maybe in your theory of change, or any kind of related tool that you might be using and not necessarily submitting. But then also when you start looking at log frames, another tool is like a results chain. Then we're forcing it to be linear, and there's benefits and costs to that. It helps you to kind of see things in a bit more of a reductionist manner, but that's helpful for organizing your thinking and planning things out in a linear way. But it's kind of cyclical, right? I think it's often good to go between the different tools and then acknowledging where that complexity might be.
Thank you, James. Are the indicators in the milestone cumulative? Ravaka is asking.
Yeah, as we answered before, yes, please use cumulative milestones in your log frame.
Thank you. Manuel is asking, the Excel template for the log frame is a bit different from the Word template. Are the elements of early achievements from the Excel template to be embedded in the log frame at the project conception or during the project implementation later?
Yeah, so in the Excel template, you can see that there are fields for entering the data year by year, whereas in the Word template, you can just add this into the narrative actually by typing into those particular boxes. We wanted to keep it as a quite simple template so that you have the flexibility to use that in the way that works best for you. So if your indicator has specific milestones there or yearly achievements that are planned, put that into the text itself.
Thank you, Nicola. Pauline is asking, what does community and partnership close mean? I wonder if this refers to the closing date, perhaps in the diagram. I'm not sure.
I can go back to our closing dates, but we might have to move on from that one because we're talking about the question.
So I think if this is the closing date in the diagram, that's the 2nd of April for partnership grants for stage 1. If that's not the answer, Pauline, please get in touch with the help desk and we'll take it up further. Manuel is asking about how many people attended this webinar. So I see 60 at present. I say 65. I think a few people might have dropped out, and we'll have another session in the afternoon to allow applicants from different time zones to join us.
Valentina, I just want to flag we're already at 11, so we'll probably have to.
Oh, you're right. Yes.
Very quickly. So thanks everybody for your time today. And we didn't manage to get through all of the questions, but please do get in touch with us at the help desk if there's anything you want to see answered. The help desk email is up on the screen now. A reminder that your deadline is the 2nd of April, and good luck with your applications. do join us for that final webinar if you have any other questions you'd like to answer. We'll have a bit more time then. But thanks again, everybody, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.